A very good morning to you. Welcome to the Morning Brief right here on Channels Television. I'm Jeffrey Uzama.
And I'm Kayode Okikilu. It's such a special day. Yes, the date says it is Wednesday, February the 18th. But on another level, today is Ash Wednesday. It's also the same day that Ramadan begins. It's a very interesting coming together. As though this is a reminder that, hey, there isn't a lot of issues really to differ on. Be and let be, or as I say, live and let live. So, special day, absolutely. Here's wishing both our Muslim brothers and sisters and, of course, Christians a fruitful season of fasting. So there you go.
Absolutely. So it is time to get back to God in case you left him off somewhere and reflect on your life. That is what this season is really all about. Yeah. So to remind ourselves that we're just strangers in this world, and we're just passing through the world. And so the one who created all of us, or those who believe in deity, whether you're a Christian or a Muslim, because there are people that don't believe in anything at all, it's a reminder of the season that it is time to just pull out a bit and reflect and reconsider some of our actions, especially pre-election year as a nation and all of that. But this is more of your personal life. So we would appreciate and admonish you to do the best you can to make the most of this season. Stay away from all the things you're supposed to stay away from so that you can make the most of this particular season. And we believe that God will heal our land and save our country and make it even better for all of us at the end of the day.
And don't forget that right after the fasting comes the action itself, right? So it shouldn't be just a 30-day thing or 40-day thing. We should actually live out lives that show what we preach, that show what we hear in our worship centers as much as possible. Because, I mean, really, Nigeria is one of the most religious countries. So absolutely observe the observances, and then take all of those learnings into real life, whether you are in government, whether you're in civil service, the private sector, or you're a business owner, wherever you find yourself. Your religion should not end in the worship centers. It should actually extend to wherever it is that you work, school, or what have you. But Jeffrey, speaking of what should extend and what should not extend, what played out yesterday at the National Assembly, goodness me, major talking point, almost like the climax of all of the protests, the back and forth. Well, we now have an electoral act, or at least
it's a bill.
In that sense. It's been repealed and reenacted, the National Assembly, but this didn't come with a lot of drama, which I can tell you is not over just yet. Scenes from Nigeria's Senate yesterday, where the lawmakers eventually voted on the contentious Clause 60 that has to do with electronic transmission, and they had to vote. And eventually, 55 senators voted in favor of no proviso, which is, or rather of a proviso being added to, which is have electronic transmission and what they describe as manual transmission, or in the words of the Senate President, if electronic transmission fails, then you resort to Form EC8A. Well, about 15 of them said no proviso, just electronic transmission, or as the Senate President put it, if electronic transmission stops there, or if it doesn't work rather, then the election stops there. But the lawmaker said, no, we're not children here. That is not what we're saying. But clearly, interesting times we're in. We're counting down to the elections. But the big question is, did it do the right thing? And I think that is the basic right here. Did the Senate do the right thing? At the floor of the House as well, there was a lot of contention. Jeffrey, I almost know your answer to that question, but let me just give you the benefit of a doubt and ask you.
It's politics at its finest at the end of the day. We know how the beavers works. So yesterday I had to go back to study the sequence of how you upload results. So there are about 15 steps actually, to the eventual upload. About 14 of them, imputation of all the data you have to capture, the PO signs his name, and all of the things. But make sure at the end of the day, before it even goes, the document is properly, there's a name I'm trying to look for. There's a particular word that document shows, so that I will read it out here, that people will be able to hear. Confirmed document. That's the last phase before eventual upload of result. But going back to the Senate, and I think I've explained this over and over for those who care to listen. With the BVAS, accreditation is electronic. Voting is manual. Transmission of election result is electronic, that requires internet connectivity. Collation is manual. We've explained this over and over and over again. So it was, for me, it's an unnecessary proviso, because at the end of the exercise, what they are, the people that are agitating for transmission of election results is to the effect that make sure there is no reason why a polling officer, whoever is in charge, does not capture, in the words of INEC, scan or photograph the Form EC8A. Leave internet to do his work later. Now, Kayode, the point here is that for majority of places across Nigeria, significant majority, by INEC's own reports, NCC, INEC, MNO, that's Mobile Network Operators Report, 90+% have some level of connectivity or the other, except otherwise. So we will expect majority, significant majority, that should be able to call an election to a large extent to be ready with electronic transmission. And then for the places that don't have technology, I was trying to calculate the distance between some, let's say, ward collation centers or local government headquarters and some communities. Some communities are as far as 10 hours, 8 hours. So we can give that law. We don't expect all the results to come at the very same time. So, as a matter of fact, that's why you already know my answer, that I do not agree with the Senate, but this is what they have decided. I do not agree with the House of Reps. That's why the opposition were arguing about it. So what is left now? So this is what has played out. The majority have had their way. And the APC, the ruling party, the president, and his party have decided that, look, we must have a provisor. And I was processing this guy the other day. But they cannot, as politicians, leave their flanks open. Look at what happened in 2015. Smart card readers was a game changer, and that took Jonathan out. So these guys, they don't want to take chances. Now, whether they're going to use it to rig election or not, you can leave that to your imagination. But I'm saying politics at its finest, so majority had their way. So what is left for the opposition? Just make sure that in all the polling units, you have your agent as much as possible. Any political party that doesn't have polling units in all the agents in all the polling units, I don't know what you will be doing in this election as far as the presidential election is concerned. But more importantly for me, Kayode, is what the citizens have to do. Please, when you go to the polls in 2027, as we say, nothing will happen in 2027 that has not happened in 2023. When you go to the polls and you cast your ballots and everything is sorted, counted, results announced, everybody signs, please. It is criminal. It is a criminal offense, let me repeat it, by law, to allow the polling officer to leave that polling unit without taking snapshots or scanning or photographing or capturing, whatever word is convenient for you, of that Form EC8A. He or she, who is the polling officer, must capture. If there's internet, there's no internet, it's inconsequential. Make sure it is captured so that the places there's no internet, when it goes to where there's internet, it uploads. Where there is internet, it automatically goes to IREF. Because if you leave it for them to take that Form EC8A out of that place, forget about that polling unit. A lot of shenanigans will happen. So that is the responsibility of citizens. That's what you're left to do right now. As far as if the president eventually signs this act, this bill into law, and says he stands by the position of the Senate, which I believe he's going to stand by the position of the Senate anyway. So, Kayode, I did something yesterday. Let me check my phone to be sure my answers are accurate. So when I saw what happened, I sent a message to my own senator, and I asked him, let me read what I said. I said, good evening, distinguished. Trust this finds you well and Happy New Year. Please, were you at plenary today during the vote for or against the proviso of Clause 63 of the Electoral Act amendment? Please, how did you vote? Because I didn't see all of them. For or against? acting as your constituents, one regard. Because if you say he voted for the provisor to be there, he knows he doesn't have my vote. That is, if I'm voting at my vote. So, for the senators that you're not happy with, that voted
Did you
for...
respond?
No, that's why I read it. I say he hasn't responded. Yeah, he has seen
Is your senator APC or PDP?
He's APC now.
He's APC?
Yeah, my senator is APC, yeah.
Do you expect him to say he voted against?
He should be bold enough to stand by his decision. He's an adult.
We know the APC is majority in the Senate.
That's what I'm saying.
That's what the Senate president
I don't want to
said.
make it, because they were not all there. They are 109, so there were just about 70. So I can't say I saw everybody.
Benefit of a doubt.
Yes, and I don't think it's because the new ones is the first time, so maybe it's at the back. So I don't want to make assumption that, oh, he voted or he didn't vote. No, I don't want to do that. That would be very unfair to him. So out of 109, 70, about 70 by that result we saw
55,
15 voted, so 70. So first I have to establish that he was at plenary before I can now ask him how he voted. And as soon as he tells me I voted for provisor, I said, trust me, you don't have my vote. It's as simple as that. We should be bold enough to make our decision. So if the people that support him should also go out and vote for him and say they agree with him. That's what democracy is all about. So go and talk to your senator. It's that simple as that.
I think it's simple. The game is the game. As much as a lot of people may not want to hear this, right? Majority will always
have their way.
They will have the day. In some sense, they'll have their way, they'll have the day.
Unfortunately.
The minority may have their say, should have their say. That's how democracy works. And that's why the next election cycle is very important. But then the argument, again, and we'll talk about this a lot on the show today, is for people who have worked on the field, who have been to the field, having to deal with connection, equipment, and the rest. And not just for election, for various things. If you've had to go to rural areas and you need to upload something, I mean, a lot of people know when they're trying to register, do their driver's license and all of that, and they tell you that the network is off. Or it could be even the what's it called now? The NIN, right? The National Identification Number. And they tell you for a few hours network is off. So that argument is also there, that maybe the Senate is thinking, what if that happens on election day? But again, we know that whatever they say, there is very low trust between the people and those in government. So even if what you're trying to do is right, just let's assume they're trying to do the right thing, it comes across as something is off here. And I think that is where the issue is fundamentally. And I should say, as we've said time and again, this is not the only provision that has been tweaked in the Electoral Act. The timing of elections has also been tweaked. A lot more things have been tweaked, which we'll talk about, right? But we understand that electronic transmission of results is what a lot of people are concerned about.
So at the end of the day, I try to sequence how the BVAS works, because all of these arguments we're having is how does the BVAS work? The BVAS internet connectivity requirement is just about 1%. The remaining 99 has nothing to do with internet connectivity. And collation is still physical. So when we go to the collation center and you have your result, I have my result, and there's a discrepancy, maybe a number of accredited voters issues, number of voters entered, we'll look, and if the result is already uploaded, which is going to be, let me repeat myself again, that over 80 to maybe more percent of the votes of the centers in Nigeria will have this electronic result transmitted electronically. So if you're one of those majority centers, we can actually go to the BVAS and say, at least we'll look at this. All of us have the same copy of the document, but let's defer to maybe something that happened between the polling center or polling unit to the ward collation, because they rewrite result at the ward collation center. They change result and all of those things. So that is why I stand with those, as for me, as just for technical reasons, 99% of offline activity, 1% of internet connectivity. Confirm that document. If you're going for any election, whether it's Osun, Ekiti, general election, do not allow the polling officer leave without capturing that EC8A. Don't hear it is unacceptable to say there's no network. It doesn't work like that. BVAS will capture it. When there's network, it will be done. It's as simple as that. Because what can we do? The guys have done what they are doing in terms of politicking. You just have to keep going as a country.
Straight and simple. So that is our own proviso, literally. Those are our own.
Yes, we advise everybody.
Layers.
Yes.
Ensure
political parties have your agents.
Ensure you have your agent.
Pay them well.
Very important, right?
Yes.
Because eventually we've seen them flip.
So let's lay it bare, Kayode. Pay them well, because what happens sometimes at the collation center is that at that collation center, sometimes maybe you pay your guy, your polling agent, 50K. Let's say you pay him 20K in that polling. And then the boys who have money say, forget, let me give you like 150K. And all they have to do is, if the accredited voters on the beaver shows 500, they can say, look, we lost this election, but we can work around it. And they change everything. Say, okay, the boy with the big money can say, let me get 350. The remaining party can share 150. At that point, because nothing happened at the polling unit level, that was possible at the collation center. It happens. We are in all the rooms as journalists, so we know these things. So as soon as you miss that opportunity to make sure that guy or that lady snaps, photographs, scans that from EC8A, forget about that election.
We're not forgetting about this conversation. Definitely, it's a whole lineup on the show today. So stay with us. All of the protests, what happened on the inside, what is going to happen moving forward. We have that for you. But we'll take a quick break now. When we return, how are the dailies reporting the big stories? Mr. Shehu joins us, so stay with us. All right, let's take a look at the front pages. Mr. Shehu joins us now. He's a member of the Nigerian Guild of Editors. Mr. Shehu, good morning and welcome to the program.
Yeah, good morning, Friday. I got Jeff with us. Good morning, the pleasant day to Nigeria.
Well, I like that you say pleasant days. So let's see if the dailies reflect that, Mr. Shehu. The Nigerian Tribune is where we're starting off. And as you'd expect, the daily leads with the Electoral Amendment Bill, or the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. Senate in division, reps in rowdy session as lawmakers pass e-transmission with manual backup. Minority reps walk out on session as Green Chamber reduces timeline on notice of election to 300 days. That's from 360. And INEC to review election timeline to exclude Ramadan period. It's a page 4 read. The biggest story, it will seem. Yes, there are other issues in electoral amendment, but this one is not just going away. Mr. Shehu, are you for manual proviso or just electronic transmission alone? Whew. Oh dear. And we'll try to reconnect with Mr. Shehu. It will look like the electronic conversation or transmission of this has failed. But, you know, that's not related to what's playing on the floor of the Senate. We'll get back, Mr. Shehu, as much as we can. Almost like the connection is trying to, you know, just raise a bad joke this morning. Like, hey, I can fail, but you do not have a choice than to wait for me to work. But let's take a look at some other stories on the front page. We'll try to reconnect with Mr. Shehu. You see those pictures on the front page, 4 pictures of men, I must say, who are a bit advanced in age, and you're wondering what exactly is playing out. Well, it is chaos as Ondo APC meeting turns bloody. Hoodlums disrupt meeting, beats party chairman, injure other leaders. Government denies thuggery allegations, reaffirms commitment to peaceful politics. So it's 2026, yes. These things are still happening, yes. Will they stop? Well, I may not be able to say yes, because we're getting closer and closer to elections. And I mean, the closer we get, the more cantankerous these issues get as well. But come on. It doesn't speak well. But it's a page 3 read on the inside pages of the Nigerian Tribune. The 2 big stories just speak to the state of politics in Nigeria. One tells you what the game is on the floor of the Senate, but the other tells you what the game should not be in Ondo State. Mr. Shehu, I hope we have you back.
Oh yes, the signals are clear now. I can hear you.
Fantastic. We're going to resort to maybe manual conversation with you, but thankfully electronic is back. So, Mr. Keria, what do you make of this? Which side are you on? Electronic strictly or electronic with manual backup?
Well, very clearly, every Nigerian is on the side of electronics, very strictly. There's no point, we all do banking, we all do. I'm in the village as we speak. I'm somewhere in one small town called Adoje in Okwe local government in Delta State. And though the signals are feeling a bit, but as we all know, electronic transmission of results takes just a few seconds to do that. Once you snap the quantity 8A and then you send it and it's all over. So I do not know why the Senate is making things difficult, but it is becoming clear to every Nigerian that the problem we have in the country today is actually the Senate, because the House of Reps went for electronic transmission of results every time. It's the Senate that is playing politics with this very important aspect of the law. This is what all Nigerians want at this time. We do not want manual documentation. That is where people fiddle with the results, that is 20 figures, mutilate figures, and all of that. And then it ends up to the court, and the court often, as we know, award the results. So maybe even very unpopular candidates, people who did not win election. I do not know why there is so much fear in the Senate. But I can understand why the Senate is a bit dirty. So, without missing words, even the Senate President himself, if you recall properly, his own election was served by controversy, how he emerged as senator. At some point, there was a placeholder. At another point, he lost the election. I listened to Mike again in your station. Yesterday or day before yesterday. We all know how why Professor the state returning officer manipulated results in Akwa Ibom State, and as we speak, that professor is in prison. I think he's doing 2 years or 3 years. So this is where the fear is, the apprehension is. Nigerians want electronic transmission of results. There's no need debating and overflogging the issue. That is why we are not taken seriously as a country. We have a Senate that is not on the side of the people. Now we can almost all understand the fear of gravitating towards a one-party state. When you have multi-party democracy, plural democracy, then we can have a lot of voices contributing to an important debate as this. The Electoral Act will just be a mere document that will just be dancing around a circle if at the end of the day we still think that at some point there are areas in this country where there will be manual recording of voters and outcome of election. That is where, for me, the manipulation is going to come from.
Yeah, Mr. Keria, as we were talking, I said quite interesting. APC has about 29 governors. If Adamawa joins it, that will be 30. And then we have majority in the Senate, majority in the House, and of course that means majority at the subnational level. So I was doing some analytics and extrapolations as to what may likely happen in 2027. Perhaps internet failure, but one thing is certain, there's going to be a lot of rigging, especially at the subnational level, where vigilance by citizens is lower compared to how we look at federal elections. So we're going to expect that, because we've seen miracles in quote happen at those centers. In fact, a top official of somewhere within the country had told me one time that in Nigeria, even when you win that election, you need money to protect that victory. He was trying to say to me that our institutions are so weak that mischievous element in our judiciary will still back those who they want to back. So even if you win the election, of course there's post-election litigation. You have to spend money for your lawyers and some corrupt judges to be able to upturn the system as alleged in your favor. So you can see where there is apprehension, as you said. But let's look at Yeah, everywhere is literally talking about this election. But let's look at something else on the front page. I think that should be the Vanguard newspaper. The front page beneath two stories actually below the big story that has to do with reps caving in back in Senate. We will show that video later on when the opposition were cursing out on the APC, calling them names. But beneath that is the Tinubu unveiling Nigeria industrial policy demand speedy implementation. And then Dangote signs $400 million equipment deal to fast-track refinery expansion. What do you make of those stories?
Well, congratulations to Dangote. Without Dangote petroleum, by now I'm sure most Nigerians would have been in a serious mess. We're just talking about weak institutions. We all know that at some point the NNPC was the monolithic behemoth that was running our oil and gas sector, and we saw all the queues, all the problems, sometimes the fightings at petrol stations, the high prices that came. Yes, the prices are not where they should be at the moment. But with the arrival of Dangote, I think there is some level of competition now. We are not, I'm not making the point that Dangote, because there's the flip side of it that Dangote itself become another hegemony, another behemoth. But if you look at the cement sector where Dangote is in its strength, the prices are up there. So we just hope that this price war that is going on, that's the point. Whoever wins will not also become the new monopoly in the oil and gas sector. Now to the industrial policy that the president is talking about. I'm not excited. I'm not one of those that's excited. How do you drive industrialization without, stability in the power sector? Without proper infrastructure, road network, even strong institutions that can guarantee, that can protect investors' funds. So I have a challenge with this. It is not just enough to come up with grandiose policies that has the flavor of political statement. For me, I think that we need to get very serious as a country. We are competing with the rest of the world. There's no point. The president that is still talking about, we want to vigorously pursue an industrial policy and ensure that there's industrialization. The employment figures in the country today is soaring. That is why we have a huge population of our young people traveling abroad to slave it away for pittance. Though when the money comes here, the value does increase. But that is not how to grow a country where you have your labor force, helping to build the industrial capacity of other countries while, we are just so near high and dry. Well, it's supposed to be a good policy, but the supporting infrastructure, power, roads, strong institutions, strong legal framework, incorrectable judiciary that can also defend investors' funds. I can't see all of this. So I see that as a challenge and as a roadblock to any industrialization drive that anybody will want to put in place, including that of the president.
Important talking points there. These are the real issues. We can talk about politics all day, but really what politics is meant to achieve is welfare, security, better economic realities for the people. So this Nigeria is where we're headed next, and it leads with the same story you find on most front pages of Nigeria today: Electoral Act Amendment, verbal war, minority walkout, reps session. But you see right under the big picture, El-Rufai, Baba Ahmed warns against politicizing serious allegations. Now, this has been on for a while now. Mr. Carrier, El-Rufai versus, is it the SSS now, or the NSA, or President Tinubu, or FG, or APC? He looks like he's taking all of them on, and they might be ready for him as well. How much attention should Nigerians pay to all of this? All right, connection stopped yet again. I think this is the wrong time for connection to actually fail. Not this morning, really. Not this morning. But Mr. Akera, you're back. I was asking about the El-Rufai versus SSS, NSA, federal government, APC, President Tinubu, and the rest. How much attention do you think Nigerians should pay to this?
Well, it's a bit distracting. El-Rufai is almost like a gadfly in the Nigerian political environment. But I need to make the point this morning that what goes around comes around. When El-Rufai was governor of Kaduna State, he behaved around the state like an emperor. He was actually the first governor in this country, my memory carries me correctly, to introduce a Muslim ticket. Kaduna State is a cosmopolitan state. It's a fair admixture of Muslims and Christians. You have majority Christians in the northern part of Kaduna, and of course the southern part of Kaduna. You have majority Christians. But El-Rufai came along and said, "Oh, damn it!" And then he got his deputy as a Muslim, thereby enforcing a Muslim ticket. Even before the APC with President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who picked Qasim Shettima, who is also a Muslim, as the vice president. And I recall vividly under El-Rufai, there was a lot of killing in Kaduna State. Kaduna State almost became a killing field. So all of these are issues, even beyond the corruption case that is facing now, and then he's dropping that he is alleged to be involved in. He's dropping the line of the national security advisor, no rebuttal. That is a federal crime. It's a serious crime. It's proven. So El-Rufai has his mouth full. He needs to chew a lot. He has his hands full too at this time. The law has to take its course. People cannot claim to be above the state as far as I'm concerned. Again, if you look at even the 8 years reign of former President Muhammadu Buhari and all of the allegations, how these armed Fulani militias were brought into Nigeria, El-Rufai almost became a tortoise who is always present in every story, every bad story that has to do with the political stability of the country and the security of the country. El-Rufai is present. So I give kudos to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the National Security Advisor, and the entire national security architecture for reining El-Rufai in. It was actually long overdue. Many Nigerians were looking up to it to this time. I think the next person is Shehu, who is also running his mouth so much, creating a lot of tension in the country. It's only in Nigeria that we can have individuals like this walking free when they're actually stoking so much violence, encouraging violent preaching in the mosque, in their places of worship and all of that. And even in public statements, whether on television or in the media, you see people like Shehu grandstanding as if there is no leadership in this country. I think it is time to take our country back from the hands of these divisive elements, people like Shehu, El-Rufai and all of that. That is not how, as far as I'm concerned, Nigeria belongs to every one of us. Every Nigerian should have a stake. We are also in this country where we have two laws. We have the Sharia law practiced in 12 states in the north, and then in the south we are having the common law. That is why we're having all of the crises. People have now criminalized Sharia law, encouraging beheading of people, stoning of Nigerians, cutting off the hands of people, and then alleging blasphemy, and people can get killed. You can be stoned to death if anybody doesn't like your face and say, "Oh, you have blasphemed the Holy Prophet Muhammad," and then you see people without even asking questions. That individual is killed on the spot. We must correct all of this if we are interested in building a country. Otherwise, as far as I'm concerned, yes, as a journalist, we preach peace, we preach unity, we support coexistence of all ethnic groups, but we cannot also live with people who are hell-bent, who are committed, to a particular form of life. If people say they don't want to change from the ways that they believe in, and there are people who want to live a secular life, then why are we together? Why must we Must we be involved in a forced marriage? For me, I think this is some kind of contraction that was put in place in 1914 by the British. It is time to also revisit it. 100 years is over now. We can also revisit our union, how we want to live together, revisit the constitution, the contentious aspect of the constitution. How did we manage to get into a situation where we have two laws for one country? This is not China and Hong Kong. We should, if Nigeria is one country, then we should have one law. That's my position on this morning.
Right, and I think we've seen this happen time and again. Is this the year, or at least is this a period we get some sort of closure to it? Well, that is yet to see. But we have to thank you so much, Mr. Shehu Akerea, for joining us this morning from your village, electronically. We've been speaking with Mr. Shehu Akerea, a member Nigerian Guild of Editors. Wish you the very best, sir.
We will transmit the result. We will transmit the result from here. We will transmit the result from here. So, the first transmission of result. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll take a moment now, and when we return, we'll show you what played out in the Senate and in the House of Representatives, just for you to get a better sense of exactly how this decision was reached. I'll give you another angle to it. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. So there's been a lot of argument for and against over the electronic transmission of results, and well, the National Assembly has eventually made its decision as far as that clause 60 sub 3 is concerned. Now the House of Reps had actually, stood by what perhaps a lot of people arguably say is the right thing to do. Electronic transmission of results in real time. The real time became a very controversial word. Done simultaneously with a physical collation. It was just a short phrase, but the Senate has this long sentence with a proviso saying if electronic transmission fails, then you fall back to the manual collation. So sometimes you're asking what exactly is going on. Well, at the conference committee, after a back and forth, we even heard some reps members dodging or avoiding sessions, eventually harmonized the position and took that of the Senate, and Nigerians are enraged. Well, the majority have had their way. As a matter of fact, the APC is having its world congresses today across the country. But that's not a conversation. We're going to bring in our guest, Mr. Peter Aka. He joins us from Abuja studio, representing Nigeria. He's known as Randy Peters on social media. Peter, good morning. Thank you for coming on the program.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so before we come to you for my first question, I want Nigerians who were not following yesterday what had played out, because there were things happening at plenary in both chambers and things happening outside the chamber. So let's take a listen. All right, so we thought maybe later we'll show you what played out at the Senate, where the Senate was the call for a division where senators voted, so we're clear on who voted for what. Just context to that video you saw. Clause by clause consideration after conference committee has harmonized is to show, okay, to agree on what has been harmonized in that sense. So they go clause by clause. They wanted to bunch it in 10. Some senators, some House of Reps members, opposition essentially saying, no, it's not going to work. Let them go clause by clause. And then they started going clause by clause, but the speaker, deputy speaker who was chairing the session, was just going in a quick succession. They were trying to call his attention to that clause 60, where they wanted to argue over it again, but the majority had their way eventually. That's the caption. That's why they're showing APC only. But while that was going on, things were also happening outside the premises of the National Assembly, where we understand protesters were tear gas. But one of the men who was there is Mr. Peters Aka. I'd introduced him just a moment. Mr. Aka, thank you so much yet again. I just needed Nigerians to see what played out inside. Maybe at some point we'll play what played out outside. But you have been on the field from the very beginning, agitating and insisting on real-time transmission of electronic transmission of results, real-time and all of that. But tell us what played out yesterday outside, and what's your impression as to the National Assembly giving finality to their decision yesterday?
Thank you very much. At this point, it is up to Nigerians to either unite and end the APC reign of terror over Nigeria, or APC will be the end of a democratic Nigeria as we know it. Nigeria has become an open crime scene, and what we call government in Nigeria is literally organized criminality. Every institution that is supposed to serve the welfare of the Nigerian people have become weaponized against them. And most unfortunately, it's a National Assembly and a parliament that should be the hallmark of a democracy has become an extension of the presidency, a captured assembly. So today, if President Tinubu asks Senate and House leadership to jump up, the question will be how high. And there is no end to this trajectory and these unfortunate actions. It is up to Nigeria to say enough of this political banditry. We cannot continue like this. A ruling party who claims to own more than 30 governors, have every institution, the judiciary, the police, township boys, city girls, and everybody, is afraid of one simple clause: mandatory real-time electronic transmission of results, which, by the way, INEC in itself has proven from their feasibility studies that they have the capacity to do. So let us not be ambiguous or unambiguous about this. This is a script being played out by the Senate President Akpabio, written from the presidential villa, and INEC is not neutral. We were at the gate demanding for the implementation of the electronic transmission of results, and before you know it, tear gas canisters were released, or whatever substance were released on peaceful protesters. The first batch was released, people scampered and then came back there, and then there was a reinforcement of about a number of Hilux vehicles that carried some officers. The canisters were shot directly at peaceful protesters. In fact, these are some of the canisters that were picked, more than 20 or 30 of them. This was shot at protesters who ran up to the Eagle Square as far as the Federal Secretariat, even on passerbys who were just passing through the road, who were not part of the protest. And the question will be, who is afraid of free and fair election in Nigeria? What exactly is the ruling party afraid of? INEC has received 200 billion, claiming it wants to use electronic technology. Sir, what kind of technology is INEC trying to adopt and procure with 200 billion? What happened to the technology that was procured by Mahmoud Yakubu with over 300 billion in 2023? Are beavers machines like diapers or pampers that are used and then disposed? There is something and a lot that the ruling party is not telling us. The budget that was approved by INEC is a budget, if not clearly explained to Nigeria, will only aid and sustain electoral malpractices. And that is why, as it is today, it must become a national mobilization against this legitimizing of an electoral act that will guarantee rigging. Why is the Senate President making excuses for INEC? In today's Nigeria, lawmakers are giving reasons or excuses why electronic technology will not work against INEC's own position. The level of mischief. What a shame, and you could see it play out in the chambers. lawmakers coming out to chant APC only, because in the face of all Nigerians and the world, leadership of the National Assembly are trying to brazenly ensure that they get a law that is going to legitimize electoral malpractice and election rigging. It is a shame, it is a travesty, and Nigerians who mean well for our lives must resist it, because for our lives to count, our votes must count.
All right, so Peter, let's try to envision what will then play out on election day with what has been passed now by the Senate.
Yes.
So the Senate says electronic transmission with manual backup. And what the Senate president said in his words is that when it was time to put it to vote, he said for those who want electronic transmission, but if that fails, Form EC-80 will be used, they should vote. That's why we had 55 people voting for it. And then he reframed it for the other side, that for those who want electronic transmission, but if it doesn't work, the election should end there. They should then vote as well. That's why we had 55 people voting, senators rather. So I want you to, I know you've probably monitored elections. You've probably been there during that whole process, from the polling unit when the Form EC-80 is collated and it's taken to the Ward Collation Center. What the provision says is meant to be taken there with Form EC-80. Sorry, the BVAS is meant to be taken to the Ward Collation Center with Form EC-80. But before that, the polling officer, the presiding officer, should have taken a picture of Form EC-80 with BVAS for upload to IREV. So with this new provision now, with the proviso, have you tried to envision what would happen on election day with this proviso? I want us to begin to picture that and explain to Nigerians.
Yeah. I mean, with that proviso, it is clear to you to know that there will be insufficient network. And the basic thing that will happen is that we will then go back to using the Form EC-8A form as the primary source of evidence when the case of elections finally head to the court. So once you see that proviso, you could listen to the former INEC rec, Dr. Mike Igini, who came on air and explained it to Nigerians. That proviso only serves the interest of persons in government who know that their only hope and guarantee is through election rigging. Mr. Kayode, INEC has made it clear that as far back as 2019 and 2020, from a technical committee that was set up between INEC and the NCC, they have implemented electronic transmission of result to as far as 96% across the country. If INEC has received more than 870 billion and says 200 billion is for electronic technology, why is it that INEC cannot even enter a partnership with Starlink? What will it cost to have technology across the 177,000 polling units? So instead of lawmakers to say, look, you have been able to achieve 96%, what is the other 4%? How can we strengthen it? A mischievous parliament will now go back to say, let us go back to the Form EC-8A form. And guess what you will see as the result? You can take a look at Obiakpo local government. You can see the kind of result and mutilation, because the ground and the shrine of INEC election rigging is in the collation centers.
Peter,
and that is why Nigerians are insisting that let the results transmitted be evidence.
So quickly, and I want us to break this down so we are able to properly envision it. So at every polling unit, you have a party agent, right? So you have an agent for the APC, PDP, ADC, Labour Party, and the rest. And their job is and their job is quite simple: to ensure that they monitor the process, that the votes that are tallied for my party are the votes that my party really got when they were counting the votes, right? Now, these same agents are meant to move also to the Ward Collation Center to ensure that it is what happened at the polling unit that is happening at the Ward Collation Center. That's one. Two, we have voters in those polling units as well who usually stay behind and say, okay, you have to snap this thing and upload before you go. So are you saying that if peradventure they want to rig the election, what happens to these polling unit, these agents, these party agents? Aren't they there to ensure that this doesn't happen? Even the voters themselves, who are meant to mandate and say you have to snap this, are you saying that they also may fail in their duty to properly police that process?
Let us just be clear that all of what you have explained were part of the consideration of INEC when Mahmoud Yakubu wrote the INEC position paper 21 and said, in the light of all of the issues that happened between polling units, collation centers, and finally the National Collation Center, we need to reduce human interference as much as possible. You have seen cases with recorded voice notes of how governors of states went to capture collation centers where party agents were manhandled. Some persons even disappeared even till date, where security and law enforcement officials were used in collation centers, and at the end, the Form EC8A forms that were seen were different. That is why INEC in its own wisdom said, to reduce human interference, let what comes from the polling unit be transmitted in real time at that point to a central server where everybody has access to, so that between there and whatever later transpires, the results that everybody has countersigned, the presiding officer has also stamped on, becomes the evidence that will be admissible. Because Nigeria as it is today, there are strong men who have powers to envisage and to usurp whatever that happens within the system, and that is what gives credibility or gives strength to persons in the ruling party, where people can go as governors with personal security to collation centers and twist the entire process. Nigerians are saying INEC has done a feasibility study. INEC has set a record with their position paper. We want to reduce human interference from the process between voter registration, voting, and transmission. Let the results be transmitted in real time to a central place where everybody has access to, and not where people who are desperate for power can begin to undermine the process. I do not think that that is ambiguous. And anybody who is still saying that we must resort back to that Form EC8A form, if you have done a certain thing for long and it has ended up in little or more and more unfortunate incidents, repeating the same thing and expecting a different result, would that not be insanity? We must understand the peculiarities of our elections, and that is why the Senate and the National Assembly must be insisting that to bring transparency and accountability, let this process be seen to be more transparent. What do we do to ensure that it is verified by Nigerians and seen to know that there is transparency? Anything other than that is a backdoor and a surreptitious attempt to steal the mandate of the people.
Ms. Araka, the biggest challenge, I was just looking at the big picture, why these issues, and the big picture is lack of trust in our institution. If INEC was a trusted agency, I don't think all of this will happen. That's why I'm telling you, lead the campaign around fixing INEC as an institution. So there's a crisis of confidence here in INEC, in the judiciary, and all of that. But before I ask my question, let me run through a few data. So as a 2023 presidential election, now people are really paying attention to the presidential election, which is very important. So there's expected to be greater vigilance when it comes to presidential election. The subnational is where the bigger shenanigans usually happen. So let's talk about the presidential election and some of the things I want to ask you. From the record of INEC IREV, I checked out yesterday, total of 176,846 polling units. Uploaded results in that election for presidential poll was 167,443 results, not uploaded about 9,403. So total uploaded results, whenever they finally came to about 94%. So we had just about 6% of election results not uploaded. And then, you know, there's a Form EC40G that has to do with when elections are cancelled or elections don't hold, that can override whatever has been perhaps published as Form EC8A because of what had happened. So this is the reality. Majority in democracy have now had their way. What is left now is for the president to either sign or not sign this piece of legislation into law. Let's assume, because it's his party, is going to sign this into law. What is the biggest advisory now, as a citizen and activist who is at the vanguard of ensuring that we have free, fair, credible election, which is fair to ask? What should citizens be doing right now?
Everybody must mobilize nationwide and ensure that that bill is repealed and reenacted. The same way that the pressure was put on the National Assembly, because let us be clear about this. An Electoral Act amendment bill that is supposed to serve the interest of the country has taken almost 3 years to pass since 2023. The same National Assembly that changed the national anthem in one day. If President Tinubu wants to borrow money today from Ope to clear Pampe, he will get it under 5 minutes. But somehow, after spending more than 300 billion, they said there was a glitch. Until today, nobody has told Nigeria what caused the glitch. And then we have an electoral bill that has dragged almost less than a year into the next election. Everything is deliberate. The current INEC chairman is likely to be worse than Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, because until INEC and the National Assembly comes to do an expose of what every penny in the INEC budget is to be used for, it is only going to sustain and aid electoral malpractices. Do you know that in INEC today, every election, contractors are awarded contracts for electronic technology to the tune of hundreds of millions? When there was a glitch in 2023, which of those contractors was brought to book? Which of them was prosecuted or questioned as to why the technology failed? But we have budgeted another 200 billion. So it is up to Nigerians to decide whether we want to remain hostages and taken hostage by a handful of desperate politicians who want to retain in power with or without the mandate of the people. So as it is today, Nigerians must mobilize and reject it for the Senate to recall themselves and National Assembly and repeal that bill. And ahead of that or beyond that, it must become a rallying point for mobilization ahead of 2027. Because even when that bill is passed, if it is eventually scales through, there will still be loopholes. Nigerian politicians can do, there is no extent to the level of crime and criminality desperate politicians will not get into. So Nigerians must know that this depends, our lives depend on it. There is no country where the vote of the people count, where leaders will act as irresponsibly and as reckless as what we see in Nigeria today. So as a people, this law is just a pointer to a problem, that elections have consequences, and that is where we are today. Buhari was the mistake that should never have been made. Tinubu is the consequence of that mistake. If we allow a consolidation of the criminality that took place in 2023, we are the collateral for bad governance. We are paying with our lives, as you can see in Kwara, in Benue Plateau, all over the country, in southern Kaduna. So the choice is ours to make. If we want to be accomplices to our own oppression, or we want to cooperate with our hostage takers, or we want to unite and fight for freedom. But as for us, a luta continua. I'm not a criminal. I want a better country. And this country, we do not die here. We live here. Nigeria must work in my lifetime. Every Nigerian must wake up and know that this is an assault. This is a coup against democracy. If you allow it to prevail, so Nigerian politicians will test your ability to take bad governance.
Two things, Mr. Peter. To be realistic, is it realistic to expect them to rescind their decision after they just rescinded what they put out? You know, there was a clause that was rescinded and then adopted in the repeal and reenactment. That's on one hand. So is it really possible to expect all of that at the end of the day? Shouldn't the citizens be looking at how to manage the situation that is already at hand? Because as a matter of fact, right now we are racing against time. Literally
against time,
racing. We even worry about logistics because the big picture. So what is really, I want you to speak to what is realistic. Nigeria belongs to all of us. And it is within their, my apologies, it is within their right as well to say they want a proviso to back up, whether they want to use it for rigging or whatever, or is for the right reason or the wrong reason. That's why we're arguing. But it's also within their right to say this is what we want, and they've garnered the right majority to get what they want. You get my drift?
No, it is not within their rights to usurp to use their powers against the people. It is within their rights to mirror the aspirations of people they represent. Let us not be confused. The issues of technology were settled by even technical committees from the, what do they call them? Public hearings that met with both houses and the committees. So this issue is just orchestrated by a handful of politicians with pressure from the presidency. It is not within the right of lawmakers to take away what is the popular demand of the citizens and what they know will enhance transparency. And on the issue of repealing and reenacting, it is unfortunate that when we began the campaign for these electoral reforms as far back as 2023, I have almost become a broken record. Some persons did not see reason for it. They felt, oh man, maybe it is not that important or we can get it. This delay we have today was deliberate. Everything you see going on, the confusion you see in the system is not coming out of the blues. It is a strategy to use confusion as a period and a way of manipulation. So in all of this, the citizens will become overwhelmed. Time has run out. What can we do? And within this, that is when you see politicians begin to strike. If Nigerians in a critical mass insist that the right thing to be done, it will be done. The same way they went on holidays and recalled themselves. But beyond that, I will continue to insist. Nigerians have the power to put pressure that what needs to be done, a clear bill is passed and then mobilized ahead of 2027. So in all that we do, I agree with you to the extent that we must not take our eyes off the goal, which is 2027 elections. But the road that lead up to 2027 is as important as what eventually happens there. It is up to Nigerians. We must ask ourselves the question, between the power of the people and criminals in power, which should be greater? Once the people decide that enough, it will be enough. But for as long as we continue to argue whether it can be done, it cannot be done, will it be done, then we give them the opportunity to consolidate on what is their plan. But once the people say this is what a majority wants, it will scale through.
And that is really the idea of representation, right? That's what this form of democracy is meant to achieve. So there are 200 million plus people in Nigeria. Obviously, the 200 million plus people can't sit down to make every single decision. So democracy said, let's have people represent these 200 million people in groups from states, senatorial districts, or for House of Reps and the rest. And it's meant to be what the majority within those people decide that their representative then puts forward as a decision, really, because you can't have everybody choose the same thing. So when you say that this is not the decision of majority, some of the lawmakers will tell you that, well, I'm doing what my people want. If they don't want it, they have not protested. All I'm seeing are people protesting at the gate of the National Assembly, maybe civil society and activists. My people back home are not protesting. So really, can you fault some of them for saying, yeah, I'm doing what my people want? I don't know who your senator is, how your senator voted, but I'm almost certain that your senator may have voted for this.
Mr. Kayode, it is a tragedy that we are having this conversation in this manner, because one of the mistakes we'll make is to assume that the 10th National Assembly is a normal parliament. We have a parliament that is supposed to carry out oversight over other arms of government. And at every point when the president goes to submit his budget or enter the parliament, he's greeted with his political mantra, on their mandate they shall collapse. So what we have today is a captured assembly. The 10th assembly has basically become an extension or an annex of the presidency. When you go and the wire or everything goes into the detail, then you will know if persons who are there are acting independently. And do not also forget that we also need the benefit of hindsight to know how the persons who got there in the first place. The 2023 elections, and how we spend billions of naira only for us to sit back and allow the courts and the judiciary to pick leaders for us. So we must even ask ourselves the question, the persons who are in the 10th assembly today, were they truly voted in by Nigerians? Did the Senate president contest to be a senator, or he contested to be president in the APC? And how he finally landed in the National Assembly to even become the Senate president? Unfortunately, Nigerians are between the rock and the hard place, where you are demanding change from a people who do not even or are beneficiaries of a dysfunctional system. So if we want to say they are mirroring the aspirations of the people, we must also query the process through which they got there and how we are going to move forward. As it is today, I do not know if there should be any argument, whether parliamentarians, whether citizens, as to improving transparency and accountability in the process. But Nigeria is what it is, and the people must decide that as it is today, until your votes begin to count, in a normal situation, in an ideal situation, should it not be a conversation to say that how do we strengthen it as against a handful putting and overloading their own, desires upon the people? It is a shame and it is a tragedy. So before we talk about them representing the people, we have to query how they got there in the first place. But this is what we have to deal with. It is either we put pressure on what we have now to get what we want, or we devise a means to meet them at the point at the polling unit and on election day. That is where the Nigerian people are. It is unfortunate, but it is our reality. But we can also do better and make this country work for all of us.
Do you think the president will sign this bill into law?
Okay, should I be honest with you, because you asked a direct answer? If there are free and fair elections in Nigeria today, the defeat of President Tinubu and his APC gang will be announced before 1 p.m. on election day. What you see the Senate do, because the House had passed a bill with real time, by the way, and should we say that the House were not in their senses when they passed the bill with real time? What exactly happened before the House decided to reenact their own bill?
Language, my apologies, please. Let's be mindful of language. We may disagree. You may disagree with the National Assembly, yes, disagree with the House of Reps, and even disagree with the persons there, but language is quite important for respect. So don't denigrate anybody and disparage anybody. So let's be mindful of language.
Very respectful, yes.
Yes, please. Let's be mindful of language so we respect our institutions. The reason I asked that question is we know what had played out before former President Muhammadu Buhari, who is now passed, eventually had to sign the bill into law just at maybe the twilight of his administration. So that's why I'm asking. Because now when you say, there's a difference between, what's on ground and what could be achieved. So APC, for instance. So let's talk about the Nigerian reality. So I had a conversation with Professor, I think, Patutomi, and then Mr. Chief Dele Momodu, in his response, talked about the naivety. I think that was the caption of his write-up, naivety of the intelligentsia or something of that nature. Now, what he was trying to say was the fact that there is politics, and then there is the Nigerian brand of politics. You can decide to define the Nigerian brand of politics. So let's be realistic. 29 going on 30 governors, 78 or so senators in the National Assembly, over 250 or 260 House of Reps member. So if you have all of these governors who are now members of the APC, technically, with the greatest sense of respect, most of these assemblies are appendages of the governor. They control these things, so they control local government. Yes. So you see the picture I'm painting. How realistic is it to knock off President Tinubu with what he's put on ground in terms of the formidability of his politics?
It is unfortunate where Nigeria is. We wish that as we respect the presidency and we respect our institutions, our leaders have enough respect for the people, such that when, for example, 100 people are killed in Kwara, the president does not attend the fishing festival in Kebbi, or where there are elections, people do not need to die. Mr. Godfrey, we are talking about governors being in a party and it being an opportunity for people to win. Why is it that governors are 36? If one man, one vote, and the votes of the people count, that is 36 votes, let us assume. In the United States of America, in New York, for example, a mayor ran against the incumbent party governor, the former mayor Eric Adams. The US president was against that same mayor, but today Zoran Mamdani is seated as the New York mayor there. You know why? Because their system is built on the mandate of the people. Donald Trump ran in North Carolina. The people of North Carolina voted the Democratic governor, but Trump won the US state of North Carolina. But in Nigeria today, you know why all of us are concerned about people defecting to a party? Because somehow it confirms the argument that they have a role to play in deciding the outcome of that process. And that is why when people defect, you begin to say, oh, that they have so many governors. They do not have 30 states, they have 30 governors. And if those people vote as per one man, one vote, everybody has one vote. Right. And the citizens also have their votes. But why is it that their eventual moving to a party automatically decides how the result of that state turns out? This is a situation that Nigerians must address. If we fail to address it, we have handed Nigeria over to strong men and not strong institutions.
So do you think that mandatory electronic transmission is maybe, let's imagine, Mr. Peter Obi's only route to winning the election?
Mr. Kayode, let me be very honest with you, because when we speak sometimes, it may seem like you have a particular interest. I have never met President Tinubu. I have never met most of the persons who are running for presidency. What we are saying is this: let there be elections that are seen to be free, fair, credible, and peaceful. Whoever that emerges from this process should be acceptable to Nigerians. Mr. Kayode, we should not spend billions of naira on a process and then we have a glitch. How can we have a situation where 93 million people register to vote? 87 million collect PVCs, less than 30 million come out to vote. President Tinubu is seated in the villa with less than 9 million votes as a mandate. In what exam does a person write and score less than 50% and is promoted to the next class? We as a people must decide to ask ourselves, what exactly do we want to achieve?
Mr. Peter, that is the law.
That is, it is also part of the electoral amendment. Right. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. It is also part of the Electoral Act amendment. Because of all of that has been happening, a lot of emphasis have been laid on, this electronic transmission. The bill contains other clauses. Remember the clause that was talked about by Senator Seraki Dixon on moving the burden of proof from the petitioners to INEC. The issue of indirect primaries has also now been, been passed. Indirect primaries have been taken out, handing over more power to the political parties. Nigerians, including media and everybody, must become very concerned about this act. It is not even just the electronic transmission of results, but because we do not pay attention, even issues of the percentage that you should get. Remember how the tribunal or the Supreme Court administered and interpreted the case of if you should have 25% in how many states and Abuja. These are all issues that should be looked into so that the courts or the judiciary do not continue to rule on technicalities. And above all, we do not have a judicialization of our electoral process where we spend billions to conduct a process and then wait for the courts to choose our leaders.
Aka, it's a continuous struggle, as you say, a luta continua from your end and from everybody who is uncomfortable with the situation. But those who are comfortable, they are excited. So it's a mixed bag of everything. By the end of the day, I think what all of us want is an election that we can trust the outcome, where if you win, we know you did not mobilize enough, not because you rigged or you cheated or you gamed the system. I think that's the aspiration. Whether we'll get there is still a question of aspiration and hope, but we must be grateful. We must thank you so much for coming on the program. As a matter of fact, electronic transmission of result is mandatory. As we speak. The only challenge is that proviso. And Kayode and I will talk about that proviso over and over again because collation will always be manual as far as we're concerned. So it's just sometimes language is quite important to describe these things.
Yes.
Peter Aka, known as Randy Peters online, an activist who has transitioned now to national space. Thank you for coming on the program. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
We'll take a break. When we come back after this break, we'll shift gears from elections to issues around governance, and that has to do with national security. Join us in just a moment.
Our website channels.
Welcome back. 100 troops from the U.S. have arrived now to help Nigeria with the fight against terrorism. What does this mean? What are the implications? Do we expect that things will get better? What are the terms of, operation, the terms of deployment, the terms of engagement in that sense? Well, let's get a better sense of it with U.S. Army veteran Captain Bishop Johnson, retired, joins us virtually on the program. It's good to have you on the show. I see a smile on your face. Does this news make you happy?
You mean the news that the U.S. soldiers are here, or the news that we're going to do each mission? Which one is it?
You know what? I'll just give you a choice to speak to whichever is making you happy right now.
Good morning, Kayode. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's good to have you. So I was asking if the news about deploying 100 troops from the U.S. to Nigeria makes you happy. And more importantly, the questions that have been raised is, in terms of engagement, how will this significantly shift Nigeria's fight against insecurity? Are there some terms and conditions that you're looking at and you're wondering how will this work? I mean, from your own perspective and background, that is.
Okay. I think I would be happy if, at the end of the day, Nigerians will be able to go about their normal daily activities without being hunted down, kidnapped, killed. That is when I'll be happy. So for me, the end justifies the means. Now, as far as the terms of engagement, from what we have heard from our own government and our military hierarchy, that even from the US, is that they are here to do what is called ADT, advise, direct, train, and also to engage in surveillance activities. We have always been emphasizing that part of the problem that we have in dealing with this multifaceted insecurity we have in this country is lack of intelligence. And sometimes it's not that intelligence is not available. Intelligence may be available, but you may not be able to interpret it, analyze it, and to be able to interpret it effectively and be able to utilize it to effectively execute your mission. And so from what I understand, after hearing from both the Nigerian side and the US side, that they are here to assist us with intelligence, also advise, direct, and train us, so that we can be a better force to be able to deal with this this almost 2-decade-long insecurity that we are experiencing in Nigeria.
Well, some would tell you that Nigeria has or should have one of the best military in Africa, really. And you've seen all of the work that Nigeria did with ECOMOG, with peacekeeping on the African continent, supporting other countries. We're like the gold standard. But we're at a stage now where it looks like wherever you turn now, there are wins, but there are also losses as well. At some point, it looked like they were overwhelmed by all the different attacks from the northeast to northwest, now north central. Even we've had parts of southwest even impacted as well. So yes, this is good, but is this really the solution, the long-term solution that we need to ensure that our military doesn't just go back to its past glories, but is even much better? Because I mean, it's the age of AI now. Things have moved on really fast.
Well, I have been tested before like we are being tested now. For the first time in this country, we have insecurity almost in every part of the country. And so our armed forces and other law enforcement agencies have been stretched far too thin. And so this is the first time we have been tested to this limit. And so it appears that we are overwhelmed. Now, you've talked about our exploits in ECOMOG. Now, we are dealing with a different kind of situation now. We are not dealing with conventional forces where you know who your enemy is, probably where their locations are, their dispositions, and what better weapon you can apply. We are dealing with a combination of both conventional and non-conventional situations where you don't know who the enemy is, where the enemy sometimes are even your own citizens, your brothers, your sisters. And so that poses a different kind of challenge to conventional armed forces, which is what Nigerian military is. It's a conventional armed force military. And so that is the problem that we are facing. And when it comes to non-conventional situations as the one that we face, countries have always worked together. No country has been able to effectively deal with terrorism on their own and be able to dismantle them without any form of help from elsewhere, either in terms of personnel or equipment or even intelligence. Even the US does receive intelligence from their allied partners. And so what is happening in Nigeria, as far as I'm concerned, is not out of the ordinary. It's something that other countries have also received and will continue to receive. And so my hope is that this is sustained to the point where, as I stated earlier, Nigerians will be able to move about their normal daily activities without being kidnapped or without being killed.
I think that's the expectation of everyone. Life is becoming too cheap because we just hear these deaths and we forget that these are human beings, these are people's relatives, parents, we can go on and all of this. So let's do some quick analytics as to, you have experience in the United States Army, and I think the chief, either the defense minister, I'm not sure who now, but I think it should be the defense minister, has spoken about the need for the capabilities in terms of equipment. He said the men are on ground for essentially two things, not for combat, for training, for equipment that we don't have. They even have satellite that they can use for imaging and track some of these people and their movement and all of that. What kind of training, since this is more of an asymmetric kind of warfare, what for you, from your experience, is going to be the game changer? They've been in these kind of wars around the world, so they have a bit of an experience.
Well, the US, as you rightly said, have developed years of experience in intelligence gathering as far as terrorist movements are concerned. You saw how Osama bin Laden was captured and eliminated. You saw how Azawari was tracked down and neutralized. Abubakar al-Baghdadi. And so US has done this over and over and over again. So they have gained that experience on how to track these terrorists down. And so sometimes, or most times, equipment are deployed to gather intel, even though you also have human intelligence. And so those equipment that you use to conduct what is called over the horizon intel gathering, such as drones, not everybody knows how to utilize them. And even when you do know how to utilize them, or you do use them to gather intel, not everybody may be able to properly analyze them and interpret them. And so I think the bulk of what they are doing, from what the Minister of Defense said, is to deploy those equipment, some of whom we may not have, because we can't be comparing our capability in this field with that of the United States that has been conducting this type of warfare for decades. And so they'll help us with those capabilities that they possess that we do not possess, and also train our people on how to utilize those capabilities, which I believe may be transferred to Nigeria at the end of the day, so that we have a well-trained and better managed force that will be able to manage these capabilities that may be transferred to Nigeria at the end of the day, and to continue to be able to ensure that what has been achieved is not reversed. Because even if we achieve peace today, it will also take constant work to be able to maintain that peace. And for us to be able to do that, we have to have a capable armed forces that is ready to continue to maintain the peace by doing exactly the same thing that the US is training them to do now, and even improving on it.
I want to ask you a question that I feel is difficult, but I want to leverage your understanding of how the military works. It's an asymmetric war, too many tentacles around this war, some economic, some is religious, some is geopolitics. It's a mixed bag of certain kinds of complexities, depending on where you're looking at. In fact, there are names: terrorism, banditry, all kinds of names. In terms of timelines and milestones, given our reality and what we're capable of as a people and as a country in terms of our sovereignty, is there a possibility that we can look at the next 5 to 10 years to end this mess that we're in?
Well, that's a very difficult question to answer.
Yes, I know.
From my own vantage point. 10 years ago, when I first imagined the scene, I had just left the armed forces, and I told Nigerians, although I didn't wish Nigeria at that situation, that research is being done in some other countries that have faced terrorism and insurgency like the one that Nigeria currently faces. And their conclusion was that it takes almost, on the average, 20 years for them to be able to free themselves from such challenge. Now we are close to 20 years counting, and it seems that for every one step we take forward, we are taking 2 backward. So it will be difficult for me to say that this is where we're going to be in 4 years or 3 years or 5 years, because the threat continues to evolve and the dynamics continue to change. If this collaboration between the US and Nigeria is sustained and is even deepened more in terms of training, in terms of funding, in terms of military assistance, and we continue to move in a positive trajectory where we are tracking down these bandits and we're neutralizing them, I think we may get to a point where we may say that, look, they don't have that capacity to be able to threaten the state of Nigeria. But at this time, it will be too premature for me to be able to predict, because we have to see how these things progresses for us to be able to make such analysis and determination.
Well, I think this is a story that we're following closely And ultimately, I think the big picture for everyone is an end to insecurity in Nigeria with support from wherever you can get it, really. Hopefully, we can end this once and for all. But I want to go back to that question. How do we ensure that we build a military that even after this, I imagine that the US will not stay forever, except, I mean, there are other things in the works. But how can we build a military that will last, a military that others can look to and say, well, we need help from you? In terms of the manpower itself, we still don't have enough numbers. We don't have enough boots on the ground. In terms of the platform, I mean, the big one on welfare as well. So we can get help from across the world. But the help will not stay forever. We'll still have to face our demons at some point.
You are quite correct. As a matter of fact, I am writing an article right now, which I hope to publish in a few days, in which I am advising Nigeria to be able to look inward, because as you rightly pointed out, this external assistance that we are getting is not going to last forever. And no nation becomes great by depending on external assistance. You must be able to develop your own capacity internally. And Nigeria has everything it takes to be the true giant of Africa. We're supposed to be the China of Africa. We have whatever it takes, both in terms of population, in terms of mineral resources, everything that is required of us to be a great nation, especially at this time of great power rivalry, where the Western dominance of the global stage is fading away, and you have this multipolar world. I don't see why Nigeria should not be the China of Africa, where everybody will look up to. But for us to be able to achieve that, first and foremost, we have to be able to grow our economy, because you cannot have or sustain a powerful army if you don't have a strong economy to back it up. At the same time, you also need a powerful army to be able to grow your economy, because you have to have powerful navy that makes sure that all the shipping lanes are clear and there are no pirates that are terrorizing economic activities in the sea. So we have to look inwards. We have to grow internally. We have to use our people. The greatest asset we have is not our crude oil, is not our gas, it's our people. We have to put our people in that position, and we have them. We have the brains, we have what it takes to be able to have our own renaissance, right, where we grow our country and become the China of Africa, so that we are not putting ourselves in a position where we have to be looking for assistance from either China or Russia or the US or right, Europe. That will not make us a great nation. It will only be great if we take care of ourselves and do what we need to do.
Well,
we have what it takes. Everything is there.
Right. As they always say, no one is coming to save you at the end of the day. They may come temporarily, but you have to do the hard work. Retired Captain Bish Johnson, we have to thank you for your insights on this all important matter. It's something we're following, both at the military level and, you know, from Nigerians as well. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
All right. From security back to governance and politics. Jeffrey.
So let's get back to the issue of party politics, or national politics. That's how I should put it. Let's bring in our guest, Senator Shehu Sani, represented Kaduna Central in the Senate. Distinguished, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me.
I'm very certain you have watched the drama that has played out in the National Assembly over the issue of provisor put in by your colleagues in the Senate to provide for manual transfer or transmission this time, as against the position of the House. Now that harmonization has happened and is now an act of Parliament, that there's a proviso. Of course, there was a row this session, especially in the House, where there was those walkouts and calling of names and all of that. Give us your own interpretation of what you feel has played out so far.
Yeah, I think the problem simply has to do with lack of proper communication between the National Assembly and the general public being Nigerians, with regards to what is being done at the National Assembly at a certain stage. Each time you have a new bill or an alteration of a bill, there is the need for the public to be present when it comes to the public hearing. Most times on bills that affect the life, future, the stability and unity of this country or the integrity of our democracy demands public participation, and that's why the ingredient of public hearing comes in. Well, the fact is that what the public understand is that the National Assembly is opposed to electronic transmission of result. But what is reality in the National Assembly, or what is really in the National Assembly, is that the primary source of transmission of result is the electronic. And then in the event the electronic fails, you have the manual. So the manual is like a spare tire where the first one failed. And I don't see anything wrong with that. But because a typical protester, when you interview him on the street, is simply saying that National Assembly is opposed to electronic transfer of result or transmission of result. But it is also to be noted for anyone who is in depth in politics that electronic transfer does not mean that we're going to have 100% free and fair election. There is no electoral system to which those who intend to rig will not be able to circumvent. Now, you have a manual voting and then electronic transfer of result. So every way you go, if the nation is interested in organizing a free, fair, and credible election, it will hold. And if there is the intent and the practice of manipulation, and whatever you do, they will find a way to which they will go over it. For example, now, you can have laws everywhere that says that people should, the voters should not be induced with money or anything material for them to vote, but they will still do that. And we don't have the manpower, we don't have that sophistication to go to every nook and cranny to make sure people are not being induced. So if we are interested in the election to take place, and that does not mean that when we have electronic transfer of result that there will be no manipulation. So it all depends on what we want to do in the country with our electoral system.
So the thing with the argument here is to the effect that around the issue around the provisor, because we know electronic, when it comes to the beavers, you accredit electronically, it's offline. You vote manually with all the process, getting to the polling booths, casting your vote, dropping it in the ballot box, all that is manual. Then the transmission has two parts to it, which has to do with, first has to do with the capture of that particular document or scan or photograph, whichever name is used. Now, what requires internet connectivity is just the upload, which the INEC chairman and even the document that guides them clearly shows that it can't be roving until there's internet connectivity, which is why people are saying leave it as it is. Even INEC guideline leaves it as it is. Why are you adding a provisor? The fear that the APC is afraid of a free and fair election. That's where I'm going to with my question. Now you're in the APC. You've been in PDP, APC, PLP, and now back to the APC. Is the APC concerned about its ability to pull off victory in this election?
Well, as a ruling party, just like a defending champion, you do everything you can within the ambit of the law in the system to protect your gains and also to advance from the territory you are able to control. So, and for those in the opposition, they will do everything they can themselves to make sure that they snatch seats and win and defeat the ruling party. So in both sides, both sides have to do everything possible, protect their own interests, and that interest happens during elections. to me, I don't see anything wrong with saying that we should electronically transfer, and where there is a glitch or there are issues, then we go manual, in the sense that people have made a lot of references that we can use this, we can use that. But they have to understand that election takes place in one day, and it's expected that the result will be transmitted the same day. So if there is no provision for an alternative, what becomes of it? Do we wait for the next day, 2 days, 3 days, and then we continue to drag on? But I think we should do what is practicable, in the sense that if it's difficult for even the most advanced and technologically advanced nations to electronically transfer all their results, why do we want to force that on ourselves to that level? But I think the central point is that we say that there should be electronic transfer of result. And where there is a glitch or there is a failure, we go to the manual. And I think that there should not be something wrong with that. But you see, there is this intention, there is this belief, perspective, that all that is done is that everyone will go manual. And it's just like primary elections as you have them in court. You said you can do direct primaries where the public can vote, and you can do the delegate system. And then people and politicians prefer the delegate system, while the people prefer the direct primaries. So there should be alternative where one fails, and I think that should be the message that should be clear in the conscience of Nigerians.
And I think, again, it's very curious, because our collation is manual. We collate with Form EC8A. We don't use what is on the IREV for collation. What is used from the IREV, which is what is electronically transmitted, is just for viewing, so Nigerians can see, and then they can compare and say, oh, what did we use at the World Collation Center? What did Form EC8A say? What did IREV say? Right. So when we say resort to manual transmission to IREV, I don't know, it doesn't quite make sense. We know that whatever the case is, our election is manual. Collation, voting, collation, and all of that, it is manual. There is no electronic transmission that aids our collation in that sense. We still use the physical, Form EC8A, and eventually we use the EC8B and the rest all the way up. So it's, again, I find it really curious to see that proviso. And that's not to say that we can have technological glitches and the rest. But the law already provides that our election collation is manual. So I want to ask, from a view of the ruling party, because again, we understand these things. Nobody wants to willfully give a rule that will make you lose election. Come on, you have to protect your interests, protect your base. So is the ruling party scared that if we leave this at just electronic transmission, our hands are tied and we may lose this coming election?
Well, you see, if you look at the configuration in the National Assembly, that is in the Senate and the House of Reps, you will see the over-domineering presence of the ruling party. If they wanted, and if it goes by vote, everything will go the way of the ruling party, in the sense that they have the two-third majority and they can decide in what is called, let's go for a division, let's go for votes. And if everything the ruling party wanted is put before the both chambers of the House, they can get through with it. But for the fact that gains have been made based on public objections and public protests on this issue of transmission, both electronic and manual, I think that should be sustained. Not to the point of pushing to such a way that the ruling party gets everything that it wanted, and which may not be in the interest for Nigerians. So where is the law made? Law is made in the National Assembly. And I think this should be a lesson to Nigerians. Many Nigerians, when it comes to elections, are only interested in who becomes the president and who becomes the governor of a state. Not much interest is is focused on who become the senator, who become the members of House of Reps, until after you finish electing your president and your governor. And at the end of the day, the public will find out that their lives, their future, their security, and the integrity of the democratic system is all dependent on the quality of the people that they elected into office. So they don't remember senators, they don't remember reps during elections. It's all about the executive power. And this should be a lesson for the next elections, that people that should be elected to the parliament will be of the same scale, major, moral standing, like the way people use it for those who are going to be at the executive level. So that is very important.
Senator, a lot of people know your antecedents, how you fought for democracy as an activist, and they see you supporting, well, the manual transmission proviso. For those who may be thinking, well, this is not the Senator Shehu Sani we know, in the sense that they feel that you are against democracy in that sense. What do you have to say to them? Because for a lot of the activists now who are protesting at the National Assembly, the same way you protested at some point, they think that electronic transmission is a way to go. Any other thing is just trying to rig the election. So do you see yourself in their shoes right now? Is that something you want to tell them, activist to activist?
Well, first of all, I am not someone who is opposed to electronic transmission of result. I 100% believe in it. But what I said is that in the case there are issues with that, we should have an alternative in that very sense. And being an activist, I'm also a politician, and I know that there are realities that happen in politics which you don't see them in activism. For example, you have a ruling party and you have an opposition party. To me, as a politician, I don't see any much difference between the way the ruling parties process its politics and the way the opposition, because this is very clear. First of all, if you have to, the process where people win primary election in the ruling party is still the same process where people have to win elections in the opposition party. For you to be an executive of the ruling party, you have to be a candidate of someone. The same thing with the opposition party. For you to win the primary elections, the fear in the ruling party is the use of money. The fear in the opposition party is also the use of money. And let us be very clear. The elements you see in the opposition today were part and parcel of the ruling party. If you're looking for Nigerians who destroyed this country from 99 to 2015, they are in the opposition. If you're looking for those who destroyed Nigeria from 15 to 23, they are in the opposition. If you're looking for those who participated in the first and second semester of destruction of this country, they are all in the opposition. So it's not that in Nigeria you have the way you have it in the Western world, where you have a party that is left, right, center, right. Oh, this one is communist, this one is socialist, this one is capitalist.
But Senator, I didn't know in the ruling party as well. I didn't know in the ruling party as well, Senator Sani.
What? Who?
Those who destroyed during the first semester and second semester, aren't they in the ruling party?
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that it is expected that the alternative should be of a moral higher ground than those in the ruling party. So, but to me, I have seen them. You can all be anywhere. This is not a situation where you have any ideological or philosophical difference between those in the ruling party and those in the opposition. Those in the ruling party are for IMF, for World Bank, for neoliberal economic policy. Those in the opposition are also the same. So it's not that here you have a Marxist-Leninist and then you have a capitalist, or you have a liberal Democrat and the other one is Republican. It is not the case. Any person can fit into both sides and nothing else. And so when you say the opposition, I don't see any opposition in terms of any difference in the philosophy, the ideology, or political thought. So to me, they are all the same. And the activists you're talking about are demanding for electronic transmission of results. I 100%. And I can participate in the protest for that. But what I'm saying is that I have been in politics. I contest election, I lost, and I contest election, I won. And I have been through the system, and I know how it works. So we shouldn't cage ourselves to the point that we don't have a way out when it comes to it. So protest is good. They should continue to protest. If you don't have protest, people in government will always have their way in everything. And my experience in National Assembly is that if the public doesn't respond in terms of protest and resisting issues which they feel strongly about, the people in the National Assembly will get over whatever they want. And for example, when I was there was a bill against on registration of NGOs, on the social media restriction and all that. It is the public from the outside that challenged that attempt to restrict the rights of Nigerians to freely express themselves, and it worked. So people should protest peacefully. That is the element of democracy. But to me, I stand that we should conduct our elections free, fair, and credibly, to the point that the world will see us as a genuine democracy. For example, now, what's happening in the world? Nobody is interested in elections in Africa. Can you now look at Donald Trump and say he's an example of democracy? They too, they have no respect for rule of law. They have no respect for court orders. They have also, they threaten even their members of National Assembly.
All right, distinguished.
In fact, so to us, it's left for us to do the right thing as a country, because even those nations that are advanced in democracy are no more interested in whatever we do here.
Yeah, distinguished. Let's go to other conversation. You know, all of us are stakeholders, politicians, journalists, CSOs, and even the Nigerian citizens. And we know that collation is manual. Transmission is just to compare what has happened at the collation center, to compare what has happened at the polling unit, so that the shenanigans we know that happens at collation center, it reduces. That doesn't mean there will not be rigging. So perhaps the argument is, if you can't rig before that result is uploaded, that's your business, for those who have a penchant for always rigging election. So that's why the provisor is a bit funny, because INEC even conducted that election, 2023, with the guidelines of what was being proposed initially, and we saw how that election went. So that's why we say there's nothing that's happening in 2027 that will not that had not happened in 2023. So why provide a provisor that can give leeway to all kinds of shenanigans? But let's talk about national security. The boots are on ground. The 100 soldiers now. The official statement says they are here for training and equipment. What's your expectation? Because we need to have an expectation. There's no free meal living in Freetown. What's your expectation of this relationship? Because there has been the back and forth of the diplomatic role, and you know how that eventually panned out. Now there's this relationship. Whether it's a necessary or forced relationship, we do not know. But we're happy for whatever it is that will help us to make sure that our people are being stop being killed like chickens and animals in that sense. What's your take?
Well, first of all, I must remind the viewers that I come from a state that has suffered under the attacks of bandits and terrorists in the last 1.5 decades. So speaking, I believe that I'm not going to simply talk based on what I read on newspapers, but what somebody says, or simply a perspective. I am going to talk as someone who comes from the state that is at the center of this violence, this conflict, these terror attacks. That's one. Secondly, I have read some of my friends, some of my comrades, that they have written an open letter opposed to U.S. military presence in Nigeria, and on the ground that our sovereignty is violated and there are other motives and intents with this presence of the U.S. military. Well, to me, we have suffered enough as a people and as a country, in the sense that this is almost dragging up to 2 decades when terrorists have started their violence and bloodshed in our own part of the country and have killed hundreds of thousands of people. It started from the northeast with Boko Haram, then you have ISWAP, then you have Ansaru, then you have Darus Islam, and then it comes to the northwest, you have bandits, then you have Mahmudawa, Lakurawa, and all this nonsense of terrorists killing our people. Now, we cannot say as a nation that we have to fold our arms or close our doors against support from other nations. No military in the whole world today can operate without the support of militaries or army of other nations. United States has moved its own aircraft carrier to the Gulf today, but it is banking on support from its Gulf allies, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Israel, and other nations around that region for it to achieve its objective. Russia is in Ukraine. Is working in tandem with Ukraine, with North Korea,
yes,
and Iran. Nigeria, we need the presence of military, U.S. military troops to help in intelligence sharing, to partner with our army, for us to be able to crush and annihilate these bandits and terrorists.
All right, distinguished.
They kill our people.
My apologies, we're totally out of time, but I think your point is well noted. It's an ongoing conversation. Our eyes and our ears are watching what will play out, but we're totally out of time. But I must thank you so much. It's not my intention to cut your thoughts, but because of time. Distinguished Senator Shehu Sani represented Kaduna Central in the National Assembly in the Senate. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for having me.
And that's it on the program. Thank you so much for your time and your company. I'm Jeffrey Hosama. Bye-bye.
And just before we go, let's tell you that we're following the story that has been trending online about a TikTok user who posted a video, a series of other videos, alleging that she was raped on Sunday after she drank herself to sleep while struggling with insomnia. The user, as Mirabel, but Channels Television has reached out to the Ogun State Police, which is said to be handling this case, and the police spokesperson confirmed that she is with a friend, and they had visited the hospital. That's the police, and well, the investigation will get into full swing today, and they'll get more details and, of course, give the public what exactly is going on. So that's what we have at this moment about this case. The Ogun State Police is investigating, and we'll be here to give you all of the updates. Well, I'm Kayode Okikiolu. Sunrise Daily is next. Have a great day.